Hey everyone! A few months ago, I posted a video on how to build a chatbot using Cisco Webex and the Open Weather APIs. And in this video, we're going to do a little bit of a follow-up to that, where we're going to show how you can make your chatbot a little bit more interactive using something called AdaptiveCards. Now, in the previous example, our bot was pretty much just all text-based using a set of commands where you'd ask the bot for the weather and pass it a zip code. And then the bot would also respond back using nothing but plain text. Now that's all well and good, but depending on how complex we get with some of our command syntax, some of those bot chat commands could get a bit excessive for the average user to try to remember, what's the structure? How do I need to put things? Is there certain parameters that I'm forgetting to include? And so one way that we can improve upon our bot is using something called AdaptiveCards, where instead we give the user kind of a visual method of inputting information and interacting with the bot. This can also make our bot seem a little bit more polished, since we're able to display information in a more clean, formatted, and organized way, and we can include things like links and images and charts and tables and all that fun stuff. So it's worth calling out too that AdaptiveCards aren't even a Cisco or Webex specific product. They're actually created as part of a project by Microsoft in order to create kind of a platform-independent methodology and structure for creating these types of card interfaces. So in theory, if we created a card for our Webex bot, but we wanted to have the same bot interface and same feel for users who use something like Microsoft Teams, that same card schema could be used in both places to give users kind of an identical feel across platforms. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started in building our cards. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to check out Microsoft's Adaptive Card Designer. And this is going to give us a visual web-based interface that we can use in order to help design our cards and see what they look like rather than just writing out the plain JSON and hoping it works. So up at the top of this page, we'll go ahead and click Designer. And on the Designer page, we can see a whole mess of options, including all of the different card elements on the left side. These are all drag and drop options, so we can drag them onto the card interface. By default, we are given a sample card in the middle, some information about the card structure on the one side, and then also see what that JSON payload looks like on the bottom panes. Now, the first thing to note is there are different versions of the adaptive card schema that have been released, and by default, this page will target the latest version. However, Cisco Webex currently doesn't support the latest. I think it supports 1.2 or 1.3, but just to be safe, we'll go ahead and set this to 1.2 for now. Next, we'll go up and in the upper left corner, we'll click New Card. And the cool thing here is that Microsoft also does offer a whole bunch of different templates that you can pick from. So if you didn't want to have to build something from scratch, you could just grab one of these templates, load it in, and then start modifying it to fit your needs. But instead, since I know what I'm going to do, and we're going to try to keep this example a little bit simple, I'll go ahead and create a blank card from scratch, and we'll walk through that process. And so after we create the blank card, you can see that our payload editor at the bottom now just shows that we have the basic JSON schema. It shows that it's a type adaptive card, version 1.2, and the card body is empty right now. Okay, so as we start creating a new card from scratch, we're going to be expanding upon the existing bot config that we had already built out in the last video. And in this case, what we're going to do first is build just a simple adaptive card that has a text box for the user to enter a zip code in, and then a little submit button. So let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start off by dragging one of the text block elements up to the main segment of the card. And I'm going to make this block be a title. So we'll set it to Get Current Weather. And then on the element properties on the right side, we're going to change a couple of options. So first we'll go ahead and set the font size to medium, and we'll change the weight to bold. Next, we'll go ahead and add a second text block, and this one we'll set to Enter a Zip Code. Okay, next for the zip code, we'll go under Inputs and grab a input.number, since we will only expect numbers to ever be entered here. Under the element properties, we'll set an ID to zip code. This will be important because if we had multiple input fields on this card, when the card is submitted to the bot, we'll receive a key value pair dictionary of those element IDs to the value that was inputted by the user, which is how it'll make it easy for us to pull out that data when we need it. Next, I'll also set a minimum value of 1 and a maximum value of 99,950, which is the full range of US zip codes. After that, we can go ahead and add our submit button. And so first we'll add an action set and the action set is going to be an empty container that can hold different actions. So once we pop that onto our card, we can see the little add an action button, and we get a couple of different options, including adding additional cards, URLs, and submission buttons. So for this one, we'll go ahead and select action.submit. And then again, on the element properties, we'll make a couple of minor edits. I'll go ahead and set the style to positive. And then one thing we will need to include for our bot is some information in the data field. And so we'll add a little dictionary item here that has a key of callback underscore keyword and a value of weather. Now, the reason this is important is this data will be embedded in that submit button. So when the information gets submitted from the card back to our bot, not only will we receive the value that's entered in the zip code field, but we'll also receive any additional data that's put in this custom data field. Now, callback underscore keyword is significant because this is what our bot code is looking for when it receives a card to know which command that this response belongs to. So right now, our existing Webex bot has one command that takes an input of a zip code, and the command is weather. So in order to make sure that this card references that same command, we're setting our callback keyword to weather. And so when a user enters in a zip code and they press that submit button, the bot knows that the weather command is the one that needs to be triggered to process that zip code and then return a response to the user. Okay, once we have the card built out, we can take a quick look at the payload editor to see the full JSON structure that's been built out. And so again, looking through here real quick, we can just see the simple objects that we created, a couple of text blocks, our input, and our action button. And so for now, we'll go ahead and copy this out, and we'll hop over to VS Code. In VS Code, I'm going to go ahead and create a new file called input-card.json. In this file, I'm going to go ahead and paste our card payload that we just built out. And so first, what we're going to do is show how you can take a static JSON payload like this, load it into the bot, and send it out to the user. A bit later on, we'll walk through how to dynamically build your own cards using a Python module. Okay, now in order to display that card, we're going to be working in the weather.py file. So the first thing we'll do is we'll just do a normal file open for that JSON file, and then we'll load in the JSON and assign that to a variable called input_card. Now the next thing we'll do is under our weather_by_zip class, which defines our bot command. In the last video, we set up what our command keyword and our help message is, but we set the card value to none. Now the important thing to note with this card value is that if we set something here, this is going to be the default response that's sent to any message. So what I mean by that is that earlier on with our bot, if we entered the command weather and then a zip code like weather 12345, our bot would process that and respond. That command would get sent directly to the execute function within this class and would be processed. However, in this case, if we assign a value to this card input right here, then this becomes the default response that the bot will send out every time it receives a message. So after we put this in, even if we went to our bot and asked for the weather and provided a zip code, instead the bot will always respond with this card and expect that card to be where the input is taken. If we wanted to support both methods, using the card or using the command syntax, what we'd need to do is under the execute function, we would have to have a conditional statement that checks for whether or not there was input already provided, or if we should send a card first. But we won't be covering that in this video. Okay, after we've made that change, I'll go ahead and restart the bot real quick. We'll hop over to Webex, where we'll provide the weather command. And sure enough, we get our new card that just shows our title of get current weather, our text that says enter a zip code, and a number selector box for entering in the actual zip code. Now you'll notice that right now the submission button still has a title that says action.submit. Seems like I must have forgotten to edit that in the JSON, so we'll go back and edit that in a moment. But for the time being, we can also just enter in a test zip code and hit the submit button. Now what we'll see is that we don't get a response from the bot. And the reason is that the bot's execute function is now receiving a different payload than it was before, so we're going to have to modify that a little bit to take in the new incoming data. But one thing that can be handy is if we bring up the Python console real quick for the bot, and if we scroll up a little bit, we can see that within that incoming message, we got an attachment, and that attachment type is type submit, so it was a card submission. And we can also see our information under the inputs. So for one, we do see our callback keyword, which is set to weather. And we also see the input value, which is assigned a zip code, and the zip code we entered, 44286. And so now that we know what we're looking for, we can go ahead back into our code and modify this to use the new input rather than the old input. And so I'll hop back over to VS Code real quick. And the first thing I'll do is I will edit that card JSON to change the submit button to say get current weather. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to show this was that since we are loading everything manually from a file, that means that if we need to change anything with this card, we're going to have to do it manually in the JSON file, or alternatively, within our Python script, we would have to load in the entire file, find the block that needs to be edited, and then make that change there. But since this is just an input card and we don't expect there to be any dynamic information on it, I am just going to keep using this static file for the input card. Next, we'll hop back over to our weather.py file. And you can see under the execute function that previously we were getting the zip code by just taking the incoming message and stripping off the white space. In this case, the bot isn't getting its input from the message directly, but instead it's actually getting it from the variable called attachment_actions. So that variable will contain the full dictionary of inputs that are received from the card because they're received as a message attachment. So to retrieve those, we'll set zip code to attachment_actions.inputs and then pull out the zip code key. Now with that one simple little change, we should be able to pull out the zip code successfully from the card, and the rest of the code here that's looking for that zip code should run successfully. So let's restart our bot one more time very quickly, and then again, try to ask the bot for the weather. This time we can see that our submit button does have the correct label. We'll put in our zip code, and after a couple of seconds, our bot responds back with the similar text that we received earlier, showing the city, the weather, the current conditions, wind speed, and humidity. So now that we've made an input card that's pretty static, now let's take a look at how we could use a Python module to dynamically build cards, and then we'll build a card based on our response data, so all of the weather information that we're providing to the user. We're going to use a module called AdaptiveCardBuilder to take all of that weather information and build it into a card that looks a little bit more cleaned up. Now, I'll call out that there are a handful of different modules available for building adaptive cards, but I personally found this one to be the most intuitive and easy to use. I would highly recommend checking out their project page because they do have a bunch of different examples and samples of how to use the project and some of the different ways that you could implement cards. Throughout this video, though, I will show two different methods of using this module. So the first thing we'll have to do is we will install that module using pip install AdaptiveCardBuilder. Once that's installed, we'll hop back over to our weather.py file. And first we'll add a couple of additional imports. Now before, when we were just returning the plain text, we could just use a simple Python return and pass it whatever text input we wanted to return to the user, and that was processed appropriately. However, in order for the bot to respond with a card, we need to build a custom object that can hold attachments. So the first thing that we'll do is from Webex bot.models.response, we'll import the response module. We will also import the AdaptiveCardBuilder module. And last but not least, I'm also going to include the datetime module because I'm going to add a couple of new things that we're going to pull out of the OpenWeather API and add those into the response card later on. All right, so if we scroll down to the bottom of the execute function, right now we have just our plain text response message, and that's what's being sent back to the user. So we'll go ahead and remove that, and we're going to start adding our new code. The first thing that I'm going to do is add a couple of additional inputs that we're going to be pulling out of the OpenWeather API. This is going to be to provide a little bit more information to our user. So we'll pull out a couple of things like current pressure, the high temperature for the day, the low temperature for the day, and the sunrise and sunset times. Next, we can start building our adaptive card. So we'll create a new variable called card, and we'll assign that to a new instance of the adaptive card module. Now, this is going to be the first method that we can try to use to build cards. And what we're going to do is for every object that we want to add onto our card, we're going to call the card variable and then .add, and then we'll add the different object that we want to place onto the card. So to begin with, for our title pane, we'll add a new text block and we'll have text weather for, and then we'll use our city variable. And similar to the other example, we can pass the different element parameters. So again, I'm going to set the size to medium and the weight to bold. Next, we'll add a new column set, which was going to contain two different columns that'll display information. In the first column, we'll set the width to stretch, which means it will fill the entire width of the card. Then underneath, we'll add a fact set. Now, a fact set is going to be a key value pair where we can have a title and then a value. So for example, the first one that we're going to add is temperature, and that will have the value of whatever the current temperature is. And we'll do the same thing for conditions and wind. Now, all the cards are built out in a hierarchical fashion. So what we'll need to do is right now we're buried all the way underneath a fact set, which is underneath a column, which is underneath a column set. And I'll bring up the card builder interface real quick to show what I mean by this. So now that we've added a fact at the lowest level, in order to add things back under the column set, for example, a second column, we'll have to do card.up one level to get from the fact set level up to the column. Then we'll do another card.up one level to get from the column level up to the column set level, which is where we can add a second column. Now that we get added a second column, we'll then add a second fact set where we'll do the same thing, and we'll add facts for high temperature, low temperature, and current humidity. After we've finished building that card, we will have to convert the card payload to JSON so that it can be attached to our message. Then, once we've finished building the card data, we'll have to wrap that with some content type headers. Since the message attachments could be used to send any number of attachments, including spreadsheets, text files, PDFs, and all that fun stuff, we need to specify that what we're returning is a Microsoft Adaptive Card. So we'll go ahead and set the content type to application/vnd.microsoft.card.adaptive. And then the content of that is going to be our card payload that we built earlier. Next, we'll build out the response object that'll be returned to the Webex client. So we'll create a new variable called response that will be tied to a new instance of the response class. Then we'll set response.text, and I'll set this to test card. Now, the importance of the response text is that if the client doesn't support adaptive cards, instead they'll get this text as a fallback. The other thing to note is that for some clients, if you get a pop notification on your desktop, you won't see the card loaded in that pop notification, but instead you'll see this fallback text. So it's important to put text in here that is meaningful and might inform the user that they're not able to see a card that should have been displayed. Next, we'll go ahead and add our card payload as an attachment by doing response.attachments and attaching our card payload. Then we can return this response object to the user. So with that done, let's go ahead and restart our bot one more time and test it out. And so once again, we'll ask for the weather, put in our zip code, hit the submit button, and this time we do get our adaptive card back showing the current weather for Richfield, Ohio, with a handful of key value pairs showing the current temperature, the high and low for the day, the current conditions, wind speed, and humidity. Now, if we jump back over to VS Code, one thing you might be thinking is that while it was easy enough to build out that card, the code kind of looks a little bit messy. For every object, we're doing card.add and adding a new object, and the whole hierarchy thing can be a little bit difficult to keep track of what level you're under. And to that, I would say, I agree with you, and there is actually a second method of creating cards using this AdaptiveCardBuilder module that makes that a little bit easier to work with, both in terms of adding additional objects and being able to see where you're at in the hierarchy. So we're going to explore that and add on to our adaptive card and add a couple of additional values and some functionality. So let's walk through that. So first what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and remove this entire card payload that we built out earlier, and we'll start creating a new one. Using this method, what we'll do is we'll create one card.add statement, and within that, we'll create a Python list. Within this list, every list item is going to be a card object that's being placed on the card. And the good thing is that because we're doing this within a list, we can go ahead and set our spacing to whatever we need to make sense for us. So what I'm doing here is I do start off with that text block, then I'll go ahead and create my column set. Then I'll indent one, since that is now under a level, create my column, indent one again for fact set. so it's a little bit easier for us to keep track of where we're at in terms of the card hierarchy. So once we're done with adding our fact set and all of the individual facts, in order to get up 2 levels, what we'll do is we'll add a new list item that contains the less than symbol, which moves us back up a level. After that, we can go ahead and add our next column and our additional fact set. After I finish the second fact set, what I'll do next is actually use the caret character, and this is going to take us to the top level of the card, where now I'm going to add an action set. Now we used the action set before with our zip code submission, but in this case, I'm going to use the show card button. This will allow us to add a subcard with additional information. And the intent here is that what we'll do is we'll build out our existing response card to show the user the important information that they care about right now. And then we'll have a little button for some additional details that will contain some ancillary information that maybe they're interested in, but isn't as critical. Okay, once all of that data has been built out, it does look like it's a little bit easier to keep track of the levels and hierarchy and structure of our card. With that all being said, let's go ahead and restart our bot one more time and see what this final card looks like. So as always, we'll ask nicely for the weather. We'll get our input card, where we'll put in our zip code of 44286 and hit submit. And this time we're going to get a card back that shows only the current temperature, the high and low for the day, current conditions and wind, and now we have a little button for our subcard for more details. And if we click on that, it'll pop down underneath and we'll see now what the current humidity, pressure, and today's sunrise and sunset times. So as you can see, adaptive cards are very flexible in terms of what we can build out and what we can add to them and how we could display information to users. Even during the earlier segment of the video where I showed the Microsoft Adaptive Card Designer, I'm sure you noticed that there was quite a handful of different card elements within the designer that I didn't even look at or use for my card, including things like being able to add media and images, links and tables and all of that fun stuff. So the good thing is then with Adaptive Cards, we have a lot of creative flexibility with how we display information to our users and how we request input from them, which can make our bot a little bit more intuitive and easy to use than maybe just something that's text-based. Okay, with all that said, I just wanted to show off those quick couple of examples of how easy it can be to start building adaptive cards and add them into your bot. So I hope this video was helpful to you, and thank you so much for watching.